Yeah, if there was anything anyone listening to this podcast could take away from this, it is honestly the interconnectivity of the system. Because just not having a certain insect could impact a bird, which impacts seed distribution, which impacts plants, and plants impact everything. So, really, really ensuring that we have good habitat for our fish, birds, and animals is having good plants, native plants.
Hello and welcome to NCAT's Voices from the Field. I'm Nina Prater, a sustainable agriculture specialist for NCAT. Today I'm joined by Tim Hammer, co-owner of Homegrown Native Foods, LLC. Tim is a local educator who teaches people about responsible and safe foraging of wild plants and mushrooms in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas. Welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and how you got into this. Did you grow up foraging?
I feel like everyone does a little bit. I would find pecans at R.E. Baker Elementary and just eat them. And I feel like it's probably the one plant I remember most ever picking. But a lot of people end up saying that they picked up lemon sorrel, which is a yellow flowered, sour tasting green. So yeah, I think pecans is what got me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I remember learning that lemon sorrel was edible as a kid and snacking on it, and dandelions sometimes. Yeah, and then I grew up in Vermont, and up there, fiddlehead ferns are a big thing. And I remember thinking, free food growing out in the woods? That's so cool. So yeah, little bits here and there, but it wasn't a big part of your diet.
No, McDonald's was a large part of my
Oh,
diet.
okay. So you've
So
taken a big pivot.
yes, yeah.
So let's whet people's appetites for these different foraged, wild harvested foods. So can you tell me about some specific plants that you enjoy the most? So what are some of the foraged foods you look forward to all year?
Right now, what I'm most looking forward to is American lotus. It's a slow water pond plant, sometimes in some of the lakes. Loves that soil that's been deposited from water that's slowing down. It has enormous 2 foot around lily pads that are perfectly round. So if you go fishing in them, your stuff's not going to get caught in it. Also, the tops, the flowers are beautiful. But what I really love about them is actually the heads. When the petals have dropped, the heads turn into these giant green discs, like a flying saucer is what it looks like. On top of it, it looks like a pizza with a bunch of toppings, we'll say. And the toppings are all these nuts that are in it, and it kind of holds the nuts in. What I'm describing is something maybe you've seen in a wreath around Christmas time. It's a brown head with holes in it. Looks like a honeycomb.
Oh yeah.
That's the lotus head. And so the seeds taste like sweet corn if they're younger, or like potatoes if they're a little older. And the texture is spot on for both. So it'll start out and it'll be exactly what a piece of corn feels like. It'll have that kind of slippery skin texture and sweet and juicy. But once it becomes old enough to become potato flavored, it really does. It's just like a potato. I mean, you mush into it, it comes apart. It crumbles like a potato does in your mouth. It's amazing, and
That
they're
sounds
so
delicious.
aggressive. Yeah, and they're so aggressive for growing. I mean, they either evolve to be very aggressive growers, or maybe as humans we kind of bred them to be a little more aggressive. So very good producers.
Very cool. So we live in the Ozarks region of Arkansas. Are those naturally here? Like, what's their natural range or their current range, I guess I should say?
So As far as I know, they are all throughout the South, sticking to freshwater. And I know that they're in Missouri up to at least Kansas City because I went skydiving and saw them in the ponds there. While I
Wow.
was falling, I was foraging.
That's hilarious. Oh,
Um, so they're all across the eastern United States. I know that I talked to an Osage historian a few months back, and she said her grandparents picked them. So they would be pretty abundant, at least into Oklahoma, and as that far west. And I believe they'll go up at least as north as Kansas City. I haven't looked at their range to be quite frank with you, but I do know that they would be much, much more common if we allowed beaver populations to increase more than what we do now, because those beaver ponds just are the right environment for exactly what a lotus would want, and they're good for 80% of the diversity of species in North America benefits from what the environment that beavers create. So huge benefit beavers could have on lotus populations. So if you wanted to have some lotus, all you really need some beavers and then some seeds. And I can get you the seeds.
okay. Okay. Good to know. Yeah. That's really interesting, though. It points to how interconnected all of this is. This food exists in a ecosystem, and ecosystem grows the food. So we need to think about all of it as a interconnected system.
Yeah, if there was anything anyone listening to this podcast could take away from this, it is honestly the interconnectivity of the system, because just not having a certain insect could impact a bird, which impacts seed distribution, which impacts plants, and plants impact everything. So, really ensuring that we have good habitat for our fish, birds, and animals is having good plants, native plants. There's a great book by Doug Tallamy, Bringing Nature Home, that talks about the writer's an entomologist, and he was curious about how much do plants that are brought into America actually benefit insects. For him, he just wants more insects. And so he looked at it, and what he found was plants that have been introduced for at least 400 or 500 years have 1 to 3 interactions with insects. That's 1 to 3 species that either eats them or uses them as a host or something like that. Whereas in the opposite direction, an oak tree from North America can host as many or feed as many as 540 different insect species. And those are just the Lepidoptera. So just the butterflies and the moths and inchworms. So there's a lot more than just those 3 types of insects.
That's incredible. I mean, we talk about the importance of native plants sometimes, and that to me is a beautiful argument for it. I mean, talk about the biodiversity that it supports. Wow, that's a crazy statistic.
Another thing to think about is that you think about how many acorns an oak produces. Well, those feed deer, but those also could feed you. You could eat those acorns. So the acorn can feed humans and also feed all those animals at the same time. And oaks don't have extremely dense canopies all the time. So they can actually have pretty loose canopies in some situations. So with that in mind, it's doing a lot of like yoga poses all at once to be able to fill a lot of needs. And that's something that European crops, South American and Asian crops, and African crops as well that have been brought into America can't fill. They can't fill that same need to feed those insects and those birds and us at the same time, because we have to kill everything to make sure that they live and they survive and they produce the absolute most, right? Well, I mean, there were 25 million Americans in North America before colonization. So they had to eat something, and they did. And that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you mentioned all of these crops that we've brought in, and a lot of our listeners raise those crops.
Absolutely. I love those
And
crops.
yes, we eat them all the time. And so, but speaking of interconnectedness, I'm wondering if we can bridge this gap or sort of weave these two systems together. And is there a way that these native plants and foraging from these plants can fit in with commercial operations?
There definitely is. And to demonstrate the way I have to think about this is my wife loves farming. She loves planting tomatoes and okra and onions and all of that stuff. And so it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be one or the other. We do need to find a better balance between our ecosystem and what we're producing. And if we can provide habitat on top of food, that's a great outcome. So how do we put them together is kind of the question, right? And that can look like a lot of different things. I'm sure your listeners have learned about intercropping and putting crops next to each other to increase either nitrogen production for one plant or structure for, well, maybe not structure for another plant, but perhaps keeping deer from browsing them or something like that. So those companion planting situations, that's what nature does all the time. And you could do that with these crops as well. So one that I can think of that's native on native would be honey locust has great beans. Now, a lot of farmers like honey locusts. I'm sorry to all of y'all out there that are about to curse me, but let me give you a couple reasons to like honey locust. Number one being the beans are very, very good. A couple of bean pods will do a serving of beans for two people pretty easily. That's when they're green. You pick them off the tree. Once you've pulled those beans out, in between those beans are these little sugar packets all along the bean stem. And you can take that pod, throw it in a pot of water, boil it down a little bit, and all that sugar will absorb into the water, will solute into the water. You can pull those bean pods out, boil down to a syrup, pour that syrup onto a pan and dry it into a sugar. And now you've got sugar. So you've got beans, and healthy and and unhealthy, right? All in one thing. And I think honey locust bean pods, after I do some experimentation, might be more productive than tapping trees in Arkansas. So for sugar production. So if for whatever reason or just for fun, we like to produce our own sugar, I think that that's a really, there's a lot of potential there. And not just because of the production that it has, but also because of the storability. Those bean pods are ready in about mid-September, I believe. And then they cling on and drop off and fall on the ground. And I've tried a pod that had just been rained on in April for the sugar, and it was delicious. These things, it's not just a 2-month or 3-month window like sugaring and tapping is. We're talking about months and months. And what do you got to do in the winter when you're farming?
Pick up bean pods.
Exactly. So that honey locust is also a nitrogen fixer. Well, it partners with nitrogen fixing bacteria, and that bacteria, it partners with nitrogen fixing bacteria, and that partnership increases the nitrogen in the soil, which means if you were to plant passion fruit, Passiflora incarnata, all the way around that tree, well, one, there's lots of thorns on it, so it's got lots of structure for it to grab onto and climb up. 2, it's got that nitrogen. And then 3, the canopy of honey locust is extremely loose. There's a lot of light that comes down. The healthiest passion fruit, or maypop, if you prefer, that I have ever found had 8 fully ripe fruits on it, and it was climbing on a honey locust. I think that's a great combination. But when we're blending, say, native with non-native, you could twine those up with some beans if you wanted to have a really difficult project of getting your beans out, or you could put that on a next to a open tree that you've got in your orchard that allows it to get, you've got all that light on the bottom of the tree and you have to go through and prune anyways. Why not give it something that can climb on it up to 3 feet, 3.5 feet, and keep that trunk clear of new buds, and also produce something for you. So there's all kinds of, anyone that's done combinations before like that, or thought of combinations like that, I mean, the same thing with native plants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And like you could plant these trees that grow food in fence rows or along field
Absolutely.
boundaries or things like that.
Absolutely. There are a lot of things that, say, if you're a rancher, that you could have out in your field that could be something you can go forage, or something you let the cows have. That's definitely true of maypops. I've heard many farmers mention that they love cows love crunching on maypops. So just having a little variety out there is good for your pasture, but it's also good for you if you want to go out there and get it, especially if you have a patch that has, goes for 2 months that doesn't necessarily get cows on it, something
Right.
that's out of rotation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, are there some of these plants that farmers and ranchers that could incorporate that have commercial potential? Farmers have to think about the bottom line when they're running their business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have in front of me a farm production plan that I put together. We have some great plants to go through. One of them is actually one that you've already heard of, elderberry. So elderberry is a really profitable crop. Missouri is the largest producer of elderberry and elderberry syrups, just because for some reason in Missouri, they've just caught on to this idea that elderberry is a valuable crop. It has a lot of antioxidants. The properties in the juice are good for when you're ill, and can really help pull you out of a cold. So that's one crop right there that is already being produced. And in a 10th acre plot, you could have gross sales with the right density of about $4,000 in a 10th acre, just off of the fruits themselves. That's just one plant that's already being done.
Right. That's pretty significant for one crop on a tenth of an acre.
Yeah. And we have so many more. I'll just go down through a list of plants that are annual plants that you could plant, and in your first year get a really good profit from. So we've got common milkweed, ground cherry, cut-leaved coneflower, also known as sochan, prickly pear, mountain mint, Monarda fistulosa, which is common Monarda. That's a spice. Passion flower fruit, like we mentioned. Pokeweed for poke salad. Violets for the leaves as salad greens. And then we have a nodding and a glade onion, which are respectively a white and a red onion, that are about 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter in July, that you can pick. And they are fantastic. They're just about the right size. 2 of them will do a spaghetti sauce for you if you're cooking. And they have fantastic flavor. And they grow very, very close to each other, much closer than your cultivated onion, which is going to, needs, what's it, like 3 to 6 inches between plants? Is that right?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So you need 3 to 6 inches between plants. These can be planted as close as 1 inch to 2 inches apart from each other. Under those densities, in a 10th of an acre, that's 600,000 plants at $3 a pound. that would be about $8,000 gross profit off of a tenth of an acre. That particular one is pricey seed to acquire. So the first year you're looking at about seed cost, about $2,000 of seed cost. Yeah, sorry, $1,000 of seed cost out of that 8,000. But once you've done that, my suggestion to you is these are native crops. So there's no need for you to plant a second time. So that $8,000 number is not $8,000 of every single plant was pulled. That's 60% of the plants were pulled and 40% of the plants were left behind to reseed because these plants haven't been cultivated. They actually have beautiful flowers that put on seed that is very good at coming back, I can tell you. And so those seeds will pop up. If you leave 40%, you're going to reseed your planting without having to touch it again. So why go back and plant every year? Why go back and water every year when these plants don't need water? These plants, they might want a little more water, but they're not going to need anything like what you're used to giving your plants. They don't need nitrogen fertilizers or phosphorus fertilizers or anything like that. All they need is for you to let them reseed. Once you've seeded them the first time and given them the bed that they need, pull 60% and leave the other 40, and you can reseed that bed and never have to plant it again. What an investment.
Yeah, I mean, we think about investing in like orchards or things like that, more long-term plants, but reseeding annuals or, hardy perennials is an investment too. One thing
Exactly.
that I thought of while you were talking about the onions is like some of the things that you listed in that long list, most people haven't heard of. But onions seem like they are familiar. It would be an easy, slight turn to make to purchase this type of onion rather than the traditional onion. So that seems like another good reason that would be an easy one for people to market.
Right. And these plants in particular, though you may not have heard their name before, many of them are popular or could be very popular in a very easy way. Say violets, they're a preferred salad green. So if you were making a salad mix, violets are a great ground cover. They'll just suffocate the ground at some point if you pull out their competition and let them go to seed. They have great crunchy, juicy leaves, and tossed in with your whatever salad greens you're producing, in throwing them in with it is going to do great. It's just going to be an extra thing that you can add to your salad mix that's heart shaped, that's very mild flavored, and on top of that, if you were to go to AFIC at MCO and get your violet tested, you could slap on a label on your lettuce that shows the amount of vitamin C that is in your salad, which 2 leaves of violet will have as much vitamin C as an orange. And these are not large seeds or large leaves. We're talking about an inch and a half to 2 inches in size, sometimes 3 inches if they've got really nice, fluffy soil. So, though they may
Wow.
sound unfamiliar, they can be very, very marketable in the things that you're already doing.
Sure, sure. That's a great point. You mentioned a lab or something, AFIC. What can you just explain what that is?
AFIC is the Arkansas Food Innovation Center. It's in Springdale, Arkansas, at the Market Center of the Ozarks. And they have a food lab there. They've got processing opportunities there. So if you want to make your own salsa, you can rent space there to produce your own salsa. If you want to produce your own pickles of native or non-native plants, you could go there and rent a space to pickle, jar, and then sell your items here locally in the marketplace.
Very cool. That's a great resource. We can link to that in the show notes. for the people local to this area. And I'm sure there's other food incubator type setups around the country. But that's
I
really
believe
cool.
so.
I'm gonna go eat some violet leaves.
If you have, and the great thing about it, now I'm gonna come off a little opinionated for a second. The great thing about them not being cultivated is that because they haven't been bred specifically for size or for storability, these plants have very dense cells with the organelles that produce the vitamins that we want to get out of these foods. So unlike your lettuce, which is mostly your iceberg lettuce, which is mostly water, these plants are going to be packed with the vitamins that they produce. So a small salad, a cup of salad versus 3 cups of salad that you might eat for a normal salad is really going to make you feel really good. I don't know how to describe it. You eat it and you just feel like you've gotten something. You feel satisfied in a way that's very different from eating cultivated some cultivated foods. So it's not like you've eaten a chicken dinner or anything like that, of course, but it's the vegetable equivalent of that.
Yeah, I remember talking to one of our food corps folks in our office, and she was saying to teach kids about foods and like how to make a balanced meal. There's grow, glow, and go. So go is like your carbs. It gives you energy to go. Grow is your
Mhm.
proteins, and then glow is like all the fruits and vegetables with the vitamins and minerals. So like as you were describing it, I was thinking it's that glow feeling that you get when you eat really fresh, rich, yummy, crunchy, fresh foods.
Yeah. And I mean, as most of our listeners are farmers or ranchers, if you've eaten, fresh from the garden vegetables, you probably know how that feels versus, going to the store and the flavor difference. The flavor equals nutrition. So if the flavor's not there, there's not much nutrition there. So uncultivated plants are just a little bit more extreme on that.
Yeah. What can landowners do to protect the wild plants that are already there, or to maybe even restore some of these habitats on our land, in our around where we cultivate our crops or raise our livestock? How can landowners nourish these complex systems?
I would say the best thing that you can do is find yourself a little spot in your property and allow it to grow without mowing. And once you've done that for a year or so, give it a prescribed burn. That fire in this area is really important. It's just absolutely how the natives manage the land, because land management was happening way before we got here, and it was managed for thousands of years this way. So burning is really important. It actually, there are plants that like it, that thrive from that kind of environment with the ground being open and having a little bit more soil exposure. How you burn, when you burn, can dictate on what kind of plants that you attract or bring back. And I say attract or bring back because that soil has a seed bank in it already. When burning happens, those seeds that enjoy that kind of environment that you're creating for them, they pop up and they come out. So you get all these great plants that just suddenly pop back out. They've been dormant, waiting for a fire to come through. Depending on if you burn in the fall, the winter, spring, or the summer, can dictate which plants that you bring out. If you want to bring out grasses, or if you want to bring out, say, more forbs. I believe that I've been told that grasses, you can increase grass production by burning in the winter, and you can increase forb production by burning in the summer. Grass is really important because the bunching grasses that we have here in North America, our native grasses, have very deep root systems, and they're going to deposit a lot of carbon in that soil. They're going to quickly and effectively condition that soil to have better moisture holding capacity, which is obviously going to bring more of the nutrients to your plants. So having bunching grasses as much as possible in your pasture, if you've got a pasture, near your garden, if you've got a garden, or if you're large scale farming, even within your crops, using companion planting. And a great example of that is actually Indian grass or switchgrass. Very tall. Switchgrass is very, very tall. They both create a lot of structure. They both have very deep roots, and they both actually fix nitrogen. You can have your nitrogen heavy users, say fruit crops like passion fruit or elderberry, and produce more and be conditioning that soil to be even better every single year because of that bunching grass. No mulch needed, nothing else left on the ground or anything like that. That is North America's carbon sequestration. Grass, deep grass roots in the ground. And so it really improves everything. If you can burn, you can increase those grasses, and then burn every 3 to 5 years. You're going to attract, if you're not mowing, you're going to attract trees, oaks, persimmons, hickories. Oaks and hickories both love burning because they can survive through it. All kinds of fruit trees, and you get to go in and just pick which ones you want, and just take a pair of snips and snip the one you don't want. And then now you're just kind of gardening again. That's a great way to manage your land for these things. That also creates habitat for the bobwhite, for turkeys, for deer, all of the ground crawling animals, possums, and everything. Everything likes that here. And so that would be one thing that I would suggest is proper land management with prescribed fire, reducing mowing. And then finally, like we talked about with the beaver, if you're on a stream, if you're on a river, plant some willows along that stream and attract some beaver to you, and give them what they want, which is that willow to chew on. Allow them to flood a little bit. If you've got a good portion of land, decide how much you're comfortable with flooding. And if beavers come through and they flood above what you're comfortable with, get a cheater pipe installed. The Beaver Institute has an expert in every state on how to properly manage beavers without getting rid of them. And you can put cheater pipes to keep the water level where you're comfortable with, and keeps you happy as a farmer. And that's also those beaver ponds are also going to increase the amount of water around you, and also the cleanness of that water. So beaver ponds are anaerobic environments, bodies of water. That anaerobic nature attracts certain bacteria to digest and absorb a lot of the toxins that we have. And so that water then is clean to go into the aquifers, to go into the caves where we have great bats and everything like that, but also for your plants and for your trees. That's another aspect of land management that is very effective. And the final thing that I would say on land management is cutting out aggressive, invasive plants. I define invasive as anything not from North America. I define aggressive as anything that grows really well. And that can be a native, that can be an invasive, but anything that grows and propagates extremely well. So much so that you're like, I don't know what's happening. It's just taking over everything. That's aggressive. And that's cedar, Eastern red cedar. But cedar's also native, right? So finding the balance with that one is the trick. Getting rid of those invasive, aggressive plants and getting rid of non-native plants in your area will greatly increase how many native plants are able to grow there, because the plants are conditioning the soil to exactly what they like. And once you take out something that's from a different system, that gives more space for something from our system. And so that's kind of a thing that you can think about in that way. Also, something that you can do is just find a crop that you like. Get Bo Brown's foraging book and find something that you like. There's 23 native fruits to the Ozarks. Bo Brown's written a book called Foraging the Ozarks. It's Ozark specific. So, but there's lots of field guides out there, and we've got 9 native nuts. We've got 3 native beans at least. We've got squash. We got all kinds of salad greens, all kinds of seeds and roots that you could turn into flour for baking. We've also obviously got our own sugar, and we have lots and lots of spices I haven't even begun to talk about. Everything that you can want is out there. Go out and try something. Come to a foraging class, find a forager near you, go to a class. They'll very likely have something for you to smell and taste, and think, how much do I want this on my plate? Maybe I need to grow this for other people, expand it a little bit, and start small. You don't have to throw down 6 rows of a plant you've never tried. Try a couple feet of a plant. Especially these annuals. What's great about them is it only takes a year, right? So now and then next year you grow, and it can be as easy as that.
Those are a great collection of tips. And we can link to any books that we mention in the show notes too, so that people can check those out. Yeah. Okay. You mentioned nuts, and we talked about acorns for a second. You mentioned acorns. Can you what I tried last year, because we have a huge oak tree by our house. Well, we have a lot of oak trees by our house, but we had this one big one that was just putting off. It was, I guess, a mast year is what they call it. It was just putting off tons and tons of acorns. And so my husband and I thought, let's harvest some. Let's try it. And through Google, we learned, or we read that if you grind it up and then soak it, it'll get the tannins out, because the tannins are what makes it taste tannic. I don't know how else to describe it. And boy, we rinsed and rinsed and rinsed, and it never it never tasted good. So what did I do wrong? Tell me about acorns. How can people eat acorns?
Well, I guess my question for you is, what kind of acorn was it? Was it red or white oak?
I don't know.
Okay, that's okay. We can start with the basics. So there's 2 basic types of oaks. There's a red and a white. Red oaks have pointy ends. White oaks have rounded lobes. That they're soft and round. So red oaks are going to have more tannins, which is good for one thing. It's good for storability. That thing that we try to breed into plants all the time is really great for storability. It's not going to go bad with all those tannins. So that's the benefit of them. But you do have to either boil them for longer or cold leach them for longer to get them out. And there may be a certain amount that stays in for good. I have not spent a lot of time with red oaks, because a lot of the red oaks that are near me are small, and small acorns are very difficult to spend a lot of time on and get very little out of. So what I suggest is white oaks. Now, their white oaks also have less tannins, so that's great. But then there is a particular white oak called the bur oak, Quercus macrocarpa, which is sweet raw. You don't need to do anything with it per se. You should go ahead and boil it just to get the last of the tannins out, but it is sweet without. What I do is I find a bur oak, which has 2.5 to 3.5 inch acorns. They're enormous. They're huge. Find the tree, put 3 sticks on it in a triangle shape so that you can separate it out into thirds. You pick your third, you go home, get yourself a pair of loppers, the biggest loppers you can find at Lowe's or Home Depot or your local hardware store, and then cut them. Get a nut picker and pick them out. Don't use your fingernails. It's gonna absolutely destroy your fingernails. And then take those nuts and you can boil them like that, and then bake them and then grind them, or you can grind them right away and boil them and then pull everything out of that water. bake that kind of cereal meal, if you wanted to call it like that, on a baking sheet. You'll want to bake it completely dry. Whatever method you do, go ahead and just make sure it's extra dry. Once you pull it out and it feels dry, put it back in and do it again. Just as long as it's not starting to get brown or black, you're going to be okay. A little gold is okay because you're caramelized a little bit. The temperature setting you'll want to go with is the lowest you can get in your oven, and that'll get you where you're looking for. It tastes really, really good. I'll have to bring some for you to try. I wish I could share with everybody that's listening, but it's delicious. It's really delicious, and the aroma is incredible. So, and that would have been a very major and important carbohydrate source here for the Osage and for the Quapaw in Pulaski County, Arkansas. So, but that's not the only thing that they had. They had Jerusalem artichokes, and also the American lotus in the pond is a great carbohydrate source. So you're not just limited to one, which is the benefit of this, because every system should have redundancies. And that's what's great about native plants. If you start growing native plants and you start out with 5, maybe one year we'll have an off year and one won't produce. But you got 4 others that probably will produce very well. And that diversity is key, not just for your farm, which you guys have probably talked about, but also for nature as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go find a bur oak tree I think it's a white oak that is outside our house. We have a lot of white oaks around us. I think there's one on the farm.
And I find if you boil them, you lose your fats, which is unfortunate. But for me, I'm about speed, because if you're not able to process it quickly, you're just not going to use it. And so when it comes to foraging and farming, whatever crops you choose, they have to be crops that are going to be easy to process. And the crops that I've mentioned are the easiest to process, the most marketable, and annuals first. And then you can move on into fruits and nuts as you go along. A really cool one about the bur oak is it will produce nuts in 5 years.
Oh.
I've read. So unlike pretty much any other acorn or any other nut besides hazelnuts, we do have a North American hazelnut, and we do have that in Arkansas that produces in 5 years as well. So those are both great resources to have. And if you're going to start and you're thinking long term, those would be great plants to start now and get ready for the long term.
So the things you've mentioned so far, I'm wondering are any of them in danger of being over harvested? I know over harvesting in foraging is a concern, like with things like ramps. I've heard of people over harvesting those, or ginseng is famous for being over harvested because it's so high dollar. How do people know whether they're over harvesting or not? What do they have to think about?
That's an excellent question. And I would kind of say the reason we're talking today is because if done right, if we don't make row cropping out of these crops, but we do make patches of them, allows them to the density to be really strong at one point and then move out. Farming can prevent extinctions, can prevent rarity. And that's why I'm talking with you today, because honestly, there are a couple plants those plants are also going to be not necessarily the most productive, because that's kind of what pushes them towards rarity and towards extinction, is that either they've lost something that they needed to produce well, or say in the case of trillium or wake robin, which is a delicious green and has beautiful flowers, they take 7 years. They're a bulb plant, and they take 7 years to flower to put on seeds. That's a long time for a shade-loving bulb plant to plan on that, having that as a crop. So it's also something in nature that if you pick, it goes away quick. That's kind of an investment. If you have your farm setting and you've got a nice row where you've got trees and everything, you've got undergrowth and everything, maybe you can put a prescribed fire through there and plant some rarer shade loving plants, or a field for some sun loving rarer plants, and just allow them to grow as they are. And maybe you can allow people to come you pick at your farm and say, I've got a rare plant you can come and pick. You just pay this, amount to come pick, and you get this much. I think that's a great model for farms in general. If you can move towards you pick, that's huge. And that's another thing that would be great with native plants, is if all you have to do is plant them and you don't need to water them much. Say you water them a little in the summer, just to get them through that hump. If you got that and you set everything up and all you have to do is harvest, the thing is, these plants, the hardest work is harvesting. If you can pass that on to the consumer, that they come and harvest, but then they get it for pretty inexpensive, but you get the same money for less work, that's a deal for the farmer. Because how much work are you doing as a farmer? I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot. So to circle back to rarity of plants and conservation, farming can be a conservation technique, but when you're out foraging, my rule goes like this. If you've seen it more than 3 times, it's a big patch and you find it often, pick a third. If you find something that's not in a big patch, but is very common, pick a 10th. If you find something that's common, but in this patch, it's a little bit of a thin patch. And then if you find a patch that's of something that's rare or a little less common, we'll say, but it's in a very large patch, pick a 10th also, right? So those are kind of interchangeable for the 10th rule. If it's rare, but very abundant, or if it's common, but a little thin, a 10th is okay. If you come up on a single plant or less than a handful of plants, just don't pick. It's not worth it, because it's an investment. If you leave those, they're going to come back and they're going to reproduce. And that on your farm is a great way to plant without planting. Clear the space for them, give them the light that they want, whether that's shade or whether that's more sunlight. Leave everything else alone, and they'll come back stronger every year. I did this with passion fruit. I think we had 1 or 2 passion fruit plants on our property about 3 years ago. I just counted, and we have 65. So wow. by leaving a few fruits, they've just absolutely spread themselves. And that it only takes, off of my estimation, 8 of those fruits to make a pound. A plant properly treated could produce 8. So a pound per plant. I could be getting 65 pounds of passion fruit this year. And all I had to do was wait 3 years, not mow, and let those plants do what they do. That's how foraging can actually restore habitats, and proper interaction and land management can restore habitats. The final rule on harvesting and conservation is, if it's rare, not uncommon, but rare, just don't pick it. There's plenty of plants that I've never tried. I've never had ginseng. I can't think of another plant specifically that I've done that with. Oh, wild hyacinth. I've never had wild hyacinth. I've only seen 3 plants. I respect the plant enough to say I've not seen you enough to pick you. But these plants you can pick the seeds, you can spread the seeds in a space that you would like them. You can split bulbs and spread the bulbs to places you would like them, and that's only going to increase the health of that patch. We could absolutely extract every single dollar and penny out of our soil, or we can just be a little conservative and do a little investment, and you could have everything that you need. Another thing that you can do, find the nurseries in your area. Find the people that are collecting seed, the foragers in your area, and ask them to get this stuff for you and pay them for it. Get them compensated so that they've got a way to continue to do that, and spread them on your property, and do it as local as possible. Trying to get genetics that are perfect for your area, that are made for your locality, is always going to produce better plants and healthier plants. I just had a thought to circle back to the insect issue, the insects eating your plants, or deer eating your plants, or something like that. those interactions out in nature are kept in check by something else. We have all kinds of pests of our vegetables that we plant in our farms. If you're intercropping and you're making patchiness and you're allowing things to be as they are without interfering too much, these plants should have another predator that's going to come and eat those insects. So even the little damage that happens to them is okay, because those insects that are eating on your plant are food for the predator that protects your plant. And that predator is food for the bird that spreads that plant to your property. If you're stuck in a place where you buy seeds or you buy stock and you plant it, and that's how things work, this is going to sound wild to you. It's going to sound crazy that things are just going to come from nature and it's just going to feed you. It sounds unbelievable. It sounds too good to be true. But that is how nature works. If you take care of it, it's going to take care of you. That's why we have fruit. It's a gift for you to spread those seeds. You got that sweet and sour thing so that you can spread the seeds of that fruit tree. If you give, it gives back.
Yeah. And it is a mindset shift, for sure, from a lot of our conventional or agricultural systems. But I think it's one that will give us resilience and will give us good nutrition, will give our landscapes beauty. So it's not all monotonous monocrops. I think there's you've given us so much to think about and start working on in our own whatever part of the country you're in. There's a way to adapt these ideas, find your local sources to be able to do these things wherever you are. So yeah, thank you so much for all this information. Just to leave people with something to go research on their own some more, do you have any books or online resources or podcasts or whatever that you would recommend people check out so they can dive a little deeper into this subject?
Yes. Get a local foraging guide from when I say region, your part of your state. Get state books on the woody vines, trees, and shrubs in your state. They'll have incredible information. They'll tell you blossom time. They'll tell you fruit time. They'll let you know, oh, this is when I can expect this plant to produce. This is when I can expect it to have flowers, so that you can, your farmer brain can turn on and you can say, oh, this is what I can do with this plant. This is when this plant will be ready. Also, get with your local native plant nurseries, partner with them. A lot of them will know some edible things. They'll be able to tell you all of that information we just talked about, probably more precisely. They might have little tricks and tips that they know that no one else knows. This space is so full of people who tinker around and become experts in a really crazy, minute thing off to the side that no one's paying attention to. But if you heard it, just boom, you just like, oh, well, that makes that plant really easy and useful. And I really would like to leave you with a resource that could bridge the gap. So every state's going to have foragers or something like that. You're going to have the ability to get in contact with someone like that that's specific to your area, with plants specifically from your area, because the Ozarks of Arkansas is not the only place that has good plants. If you wanted advice or needed advice or something like that, a hook into the people around you that for some reason you can't find somebody, message me. I'll leave my information, and you can message me and I'll hook you up to somebody in your state. I'm also part of a website where you can search for foragers. There's a website out there. I'll see if I can get that information for you to link to. And those people are just going to know everything about those plants. Kind of turn on your farmer brain when you see something, that's good and that you like, whether it's a spice or just a green. Think about what that, you see where it grows, what kind of light it likes, what kind of water it likes because of where it's growing. You can take that information and say, oh, is my farm right for this plant or not? And then you can, take that plant and bring it or leave it where it is. I wish there were more resources. A great podcast and YouTube channel is Backyard Ecology. They do deep dives into specific plants. They usually have multiple different species from different regions of the country. They're based out of Eastern United States, so they do have a little bit more of a focus on those plants and less focus on Western, Midwestern and Western. So that's not going to necessarily be perfect for California, but they are a very good resource for everyone else. And then get with your local tribes. There was a tribe in your area, find where they're located. Even if they're not in your state anymore, call them up, find their history, their historians, talk to them. They'll have great information about plants, or where you could find information about plants in your area or the plants that they used, and how they manage their land, and that'll help you find a good way to manage the crop and build a relationship with someone that knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, super important. And I love the suggestions of finding actual people in your areas, maybe going for walks with people. That makes it, the information reliable. If these people have years of experience doing this, and, you build relationships, which is important in just our own lives, but also in our rural communities. We all rely on each other. And so, yeah, it's a great way to build resilience amongst us humans as well.
Yeah. A final thought that I was kind of wanting to get out with the economy as it is, if trading is to slow down and we have a hard time bringing in certain foods from other places, people are going to want to be looking for something exotic. People are going to want something to replace the avocado, the orange. All of those things are going to need replacements. Those things that we bring in from out of the country. So these crops, like you say, the main thing against them is that people don't necessarily know them. If we have a hard time acquiring certain foods, it's going to definitely become very popular to have something that's exotic. There's a lot of exotic in your backyard.
There is, yeah. I remember the first time I tried a wild persimmon, and I'd never had any kind of persimmon before, and it blew my mind. My taste buds were just so wowed by that experience. So yeah, I'm sure there's so many more things like that are out there that we can all learn to enjoy and maybe make a business out of, or just let the birds have it. Whatever works for you. Well, thank you for that final thought. I think we have to wrap up, but I can definitely see more conversations in our future, because there's so many things I wanted to ask you that I just didn't have time for. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you for the offer of sharing your contact information. We can put that in the show notes for people to reach out wherever they're from. That's very kind of you to offer. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Of course. Thank you for having me. This has been a great experience.
Good. Thank you.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at attra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. ATTRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATTRA Sustainable Agriculture Program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.